Hi class, here's another example of how to create a collage in the surreal or fantasy style. I'm going to start with, I'm going to use these four images. So here I have a picture of a busker or a street performer. It's a picture that I took. Here's another picture that I took of a betta fish inside an aquarium. And then this is just a picture of a jar that I got from the internet. And another picture I took of a bird on the beach. You'll notice that all of these are high resolution images. You can see right here, I'm in Bridge. This is 3400 by 2300 pixels at 300 dpi, so very high resolution. This one is pretty low. It's only 600 by 600 at 70, but I'm going to be using it very small, so it should work out just fine. But you should strive to find, if you're going to find images on the internet, find ones as high a resolution as you can. If it doesn't look right, if it looks pixelated in with all the other your images, then find something different. This one is also very high resolution, as is this one. So what I'm going to be creating, this will be my end result. And I'm going to create this first and then put that in the sand on the beach. So let's take a look at how that's going to happen. I'm going to start with the jar. See here, it's on a layer by itself. I'll double click on that layer to unlock it. And now I'm going to use a selection tool to select it, so that I just have that. So I'm going to choose the quick select tool. And this is the one that you kind of just click and drag across until you have everything that you want selected. Let me grab this edge. At the bottom, I don't want the shadow. I don't need it on the bottom. Now I'm going to zoom in and see how well that worked. It's better to be on the inside than the outside of what you're cutting out. I'm going to hold down the Alt key to deselect there and to deselect along here. Just working a little bit at a time. All right, that looks pretty good. Maybe add a little bit more there to get that corner. A little bit more here. And now I'm going to choose select and inverse because I want to the pixels to be on the part that I want to delete. So now I'm just going to click the delete key, and now all those pixels are gone. Now I will do Control D to deselect. I'll put them back so you can see that. Another way to do that is to go to select and deselect. So now my images that I need is free. Now I'm going to move over to the fish and do the same thing with the fish. Select it. Obviously, this one is going to be a little more challenging because there's more to it. And you can see there I selected more than I needed. That's fine. Now I'm going to hold down Alt and subtract this area. You can't see the minus because my brush is really small. Subtract this area. And my brush is deliberately small so that I can go into these small areas. If I can't get it all, I will come back and use the eraser tool. I'll deselect this. All right, got pretty much what I want here. Now I'm going to go back up to select inverse and delete. And now I'm going to go in and delete, do a little more deletion here. So I'm going to use the eraser tool right here and watch what happens when I try to erase. Nothing is happening. Can you guess why before I tell you? It's because I have something selected. So I have to deselect that first. Just did that. So now I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller and go in and erase that. And I'll leave that green part there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. There's some little bit more cleaning up that needs to be done. Let me go back and get that down here. And I'm doing this kind of quick. You're going to want to make yours as perfect as possible because this is what I'm going to be looking for when I'm grading your projects, is how well you cut things out, how nice your edges look, and so forth. All right, so that one's ready to go. And now I'm going to select this image. I'll go back and use the quick select tool again. Now I can increase the size of the pixels that Photoshop is selecting right here with the size, which will make it happen a little bit faster. So I'm clicking and dragging and then stopping and starting over again. All right, that's looking pretty good. Get a little bit more over here. And again, select, inverse, delete. I'm just clicking on the delete key. And it's not working. Can anybody guess why? It's going to have to do with looking at the layers. It's because I didn't unlock the background layer yet. So you double click on that. Now it will delete. There we go. And now I will deselect those. All right, now I'm going to put this together with the jar that I have here. So I'll make this jar a little bit bigger. Now I'm making it bigger, which means the pixels are going to get farther apart. So I'm not going to make it too much bigger because remember this was the one that was lower resolution. I'm going to click on the check mark there to set that. Now I'll go back over to this image and I'm going to click and drag it up to the jar and then drag back down and let go. And there it is. So remember, this image was a lot bigger. So I'm zooming out so we can see the whole thing. And now I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt to make it smaller. Kind of get it into position where I want it. Make it a little bit bigger. Just grabbing, I'm not holding Alt now because I want to drag from this corner. I want it to be about like that. All right, so there's my two layers. I'm going to double click on this to rename the layer. Oh, it's not letting me. Again, can you guess why? It's because I haven't set this yet. There we go. Clicking on the return or enter key will do the same thing. So I'm going to name this one face and this one jar. All right, now I want to create a clipping mask of the jar so that this face will look like it's inside. So the thing that this is very similar to what we've learned in Illustrator, but the thing that is going to be clipped goes on the layer below instead of the layer on top. So I'm going to hover between the two layers, hold down Alt or Option until I see that arrow and then click. And now you see this little arrow pointing at that, and this is now clipped in a little bit better. And to do that, I'm going to use the eraser tool. So I'm going back here to the eraser tool, and I'm going to make sure I have a really soft brush. Right now it's really hard. I'm going to make it soft, and I'll make it larger. So I'm clicking on the right bracket key to make it larger. And now I'm just going to start clicking and dragging to make that kind of blend in. So what I want it to look like is that her head dress is kind of up inside the plastic part, the rubber part of this lid. So I'm just doing it really soft, about like that. And then also I'm going to subtract, erase from down here because this is the base of the jar, and so she wouldn't be, this face wouldn't be in that part of it. I'm going to make my brush smaller and just go along and erase this part. I just did Command Z, Control Z to undo that. Now, I need to see what I'm doing underneath here and how far I should be erasing. So I'm going to change the opacity, lower the opacity on this layer so I can see exactly where I need to go now. I just want to go right along this dark part and erase this part. And I think I'll even go right up and erase this part because this is where the jar is bending. See how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now keep in mind, this is a destructive way of editing. I've provided a video on non-destructive ways of editing using masks, layer masks. And so that's another way of doing it. And I will invite you to take a look at that video to see how it's done that way. All right, so now I have her in there. Now I'm going to go and grab the fish. You need to use the move tool. And I'll go back up, point here, and then come back down. And again, it's really large, so I'm going to make that a lot smaller. And I'm going to turn this a little bit, make it even smaller. Maybe have it about like that. It can easily be moved. Okay, so those are my elements for this. Now I'm going to group these, and I'm going to drag this group onto this one. So there's my group, and there's my jar. I'm just going to move this over to the side while I work on this background layer. So I'm going to unlock, and I want to get rid of this bird. So I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, and I will, again, you can adjust the size of your brush and the hardness. I'm going to make this a little, well, let me show you what happens if I make it really hard. I will sample from right here and then move over here and click. So that's what happened. And that's not good because it's very obvious what I just did. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to make my brush a lot softer. And then I will sample again from right here, and then move over to about here. See how that looks. See, that's a lot better. Then I'll come over and sample this area. Now I'm going to get a little bit of sand from right here. And I want to make it look as natural as possible. I'm not liking this area right here. Notice I'm using this horizon line to line things up. Now I'll come over here. I'm going to turn this layer off so we're not distracted by it. And maybe use this part of the waves over here, cover that part up. And then I'll come right over here and there we go. That's looking pretty good. Now this area right here, let me get my pointer tool. There's two of these here that's bugging me a little bit. So I'm going to grab a piece from over here. I'll make this smaller and sample that area and then bring it over here and see how that looks. Okay, I think that looks a little more natural. Same thing here. I'm going to cover this up a little bit. Maybe I'll take a bigger chunk from right here and see how that works. Okay, that's pretty good. It's a little bit soft right in there, but I think that's going to work for what we want to do here. All right, so now I'm going to get my pointer tool back, and turn this back on. And I need to be on that layer in order to move it. And I want it to be on the side a little bit so it looks a little more natural. And I'm going to click the check mark to set that into place. Now, one of the things I'm looking at about as far as the placement goes is I'm thinking about the rule of thirds. So if you remember that from the last lesson, if you draw two lines horizontally across and two vertically down, where do they intersect? So I'm looking for that rule of thirds. So I'm going to place this about right here. Now, if I just leave that like that, it doesn't really look like it's in the sand. So I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to use the lasso tool. And I'm going to make sure I'm on this layer because I'm going to lasso some sand. Just like that. Now I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to move up to this layer and paste it. So now it's on top. And now I'm going to erase some of that with the eraser tool. Make my brush a little bigger, and I'll kind of just go along here. I'm going to make my brush a little bit harder because the edges of this sand is a little bit harder. And I'm going to try to make it look similar to how the rest of the sand is looking. Just want to make it look like it's sitting there in the sand. The one thing I'm noticing is that this edge is really rough. It's bugging me. So I'm going to go back here. Luckily, I've named this layer, so it's real obvious where that jar is. I'm going to get my eraser tool, zoom in here, make my brush smaller, and I want it to be nice and hard, and just go right along this edge to clean this up a little bit. It's a little better. Do a little bit more on this edge. And part of the reason that it's as pixelated as it is again because this wasn't a very high resolution image in the first place. Now the other thing I want to do is make this jar look clear. I should be able to see the sand behind it. It should not be opaque. So here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab the lasso tool again. Make sure I'm on the layer where the sand is. Lasso a chunk of that. Copy it, Command C. Create a new layer. Paste it, Command V. And now there it is right there. Now I'm going to put it inside where I've done the clipping right here. So now the face and the sand, I'll label that, are there. But now it's blocking out everything. So I'm going to lower the opacity here. So just to be about like that. So it looks like we can see the sand through it. Then you can do more things like add an adjustment layer. So maybe I will add brightness and contrast, or at least brightness. Now I don't like what's happening here. If I do this, I need to do the same thing to this other piece. So let's see how that looks. Make a copy of that, Command J, and move it up. So that is not working. Let's take this off. Yeah, it's not working. I don't like it. I'm going to delete that and delete this one. Let's see what happens if we brighten up the face a little bit. Add maybe some vibrance to it. It's not doing a whole lot. Let's add more saturation. Ooh, too much, way too much. Bring that back down. Yeah, it's not working well because it's affecting everything underneath because these are all hooked together. So I'm going to delete that. And we're going to leave it just like this. So there's my background image and 3 other images. I'll make this background sand. Or no, this is the front sand. This one's the background sand that's behind. So that's the completed project. Again, you'll want to refine everything better than I did here, but that's the general way to put pieces together to create a composite or a collage.